I'll rule the motion passes. The bill is uncircled and properly before us. Representative King to the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Several months ago, I had a good friend, a former employee, come to me and ask me to address this topic that you've been hearing about breed-specific legislation. He gave me some information. I looked at it. My initial reaction was, well, I don't want to run this bill. I don't think it's a very good bill. And I talked to him, and he said, well, why? Why would you think that? And I said, because it ties the hands of local governments. I don't like that. I think local control is best. And he said, you need to look at the information about this, because this is terrible public policy. He said there are only 10 cities and towns in the state of Utah that have these breed-specific bans on dogs, and they're awful. They cost money. So I gathered a lot of information from him, and I looked at it, and it became more and more clear to me as I looked at this that even though I am strongly in favor of local control, that's best, government closest to the people is best. I agree with that. But it became evident to me that for numerous reasons, this idea that we can target breeds by breed, not by dog, not by incidents of dangerousness or aggressiveness of dog, but target an entire breed and outlaw them in a city or town, that was a bad idea. And so I present this bill to you, representatives, because there are several reasons this is awful. It doesn't work. The effectiveness of trying to get rid of aggressive dogs has to be done on a dog-by-dog basis. We don't want to allow cities and towns in the state of Utah to dictate to us what kind of dog we or our family members can own. Do we want to do that? I don't think that's a good idea. When I was young, I have a distinct recollection of German Shepherds being targeted as being dangerous or overly aggressive. And then when I was a teenager, a little later, it was Dobermans or Rottweilers. And there was a period of time in the 70s, 80s, 90s when they were targeted, and they were supposed to be the bad dog. Well, since the 80s and 90s to now, pit bulls have gotten that reputation for being the targeted dog. What'll it be in 2025 or 2035? The fact is that the American Veterinary Medical Association says that you can't say that one particular breed of dog is overly aggressive than another. I distributed to you some information this afternoon that contains some data about that. And you've also gotten other information from lobbyists or from individuals about how pit bulls are exceptionally aggressive. The fact is, when you compare the two sources of information, it's very clear you just simply can't say that pit bulls as a breed are particularly more aggressive than any other breed. And that's the critical thing, I think, to recognize when you're thinking about this bill. It's one of the other things that I sent around was a list, if you saw it, were 16 pictures of dogs. And it would be easy for many of us to look at each one of those 16 dogs and say, well, it looks like they all have some pit bull in them. But in fact, only 3 of the pictures of those dogs had any pit bull in them at all. That's part of the problem with pit bull bans or specific breed bans enacted at a local or a city or town level. It's because even professionals have a very difficult time looking at a particular dog and saying, that dog has pit bull in it, or that dog is a pit bull. And if you can't specifically identify whether a dog's a pit bull upon visual inspection, what do you have to do if you're a city and town and you have a breed ban ordinance on your books? You've got to do DNA testing to prove your case. Make no mistake, when families who have pit bulls are targeted by these bills and when these ordinances are enforced, ordinarily that family is going to say, you're not taking my dog away. This is a member of the family. And so if you want to take the dog away, if you want to enforce this ordinance, go out and prove your case. Namely, go out and get DNA testing. One of the other questions that arises, what if a dog is 25% pit bull? Does that violate the breed-specific ban? What if it's 49%? Violate a breed-specific ban? There's no way of knowing. There's no way of knowing. This is an inherently bad public policy to take a breed of dog and target them and ban them. You've gotten a lot of information about this. I'm open for questions. I would just say to you that when we're talking about the other alternatives that exist for cities to deal with dangerous and aggressive dogs, things like leash laws, like vaccination and licensing laws, anti-tethering laws. Those are all things that should be relied on by cities first and foremost in dealing with dangerous or aggressive animals. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative King. To the bill, Representative Lifforth.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in opposition to HB 97. I may be supportive of the goal of this bill of protecting specific dog breeds and their dog owners. However, as a former mayor and city councilor, I hated when the heavy hand of the federal government, the state government, or the county government told us what we could and could not do in our own city's ordinances and zoning. As a state, we specifically allow for political subdivisions so that they can set their ordinances and zonings based on the needs of the voters, the residents, and the taxpayers in those geographic areas. However, as we undercut their authority and accountability when we mandate what they can and can't do at the local level. If you don't like the ordinances of your local government, you have two options. You can vote with your feet and move to a community that more closely reflects your values and your needs. Or option number two is that you can run for municipal office with a very simple platform. By standing here today, I am proof that irrational and unreasonable local ordinances can launch a successful, if not unlikely and unexpected political career. Let us elect local officials and empower them to make ordinances and zoning laws, but then let us hold them accountable for their actions that they take. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Jeremy Peterson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would the sponsor yield to being hounded by a question?
Representative King, would you yield?
Happy to.
Okay.
Thank you. As far as dog breeds go, would wild breeds like a coyote or a wolf be included or excluded from this kind of legislation?
I don't know that wild animals, like if you've got a dog that has some part coyote or wolf in it, is actually defined as a breed of dog. So I don't know the answer to that question. I would think, however, that once again you would be required and you would want to look at the aggressive tendencies on a dog-by-dog basis, and that makes sense to me that that would be something that we would want to do.
Okay, thank you. I would just echo some of the sentiments that we heard, that this is a local governance issue. I believe that we can trust our local government officials in reflecting the social mores and norms of those that they represent. I don't believe that they're inept in legislating in this regard, and I just wanted to reflect that. I don't mean to bark at the sponsor, but just wanted to express those views. Thank you.
Representative Green.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This doesn't seem like it should be a difficult decision, but it is one that I have been weighing heavily for the last week or so. There are two competing public policies here that I am very passionate about, and they are in competition. One is private property rights, the other is local control. And honestly, I'm standing here speaking, not knowing yet how I'm going to vote. So I'm curious to hear what my colleagues have to say. I agree with what the good representative from Eagle Mountain has said. To a point, he makes some valid points. The sponsor makes a very compelling case. I think what it boils down to for me is that local government is typically the best government, but that is not an absolute rule. And this may be one of those instances where it's not a good a rule of thumb to follow. Again, I'm still trying to decide, but I do know that as legislators, we have taken a solemn oath to protect the rights of our citizens, and sometimes that means even against local ordinances and regulations. And so if there is not a compelling public safety interest that these local ordinances are aimed at and accomplishing, it would be my conclusion that these probably are not proper restrictions on public property rights. And I may be talking myself into a decision here, but I think the sponsor has I think the sponsor has made a compelling case that it's an unworkable regulation, and therefore may unfairly infringe upon the personal property rights that we as legislators are obligated to defend. I leave that with you to contemplate. I'll still be contemplating it for the next few minutes, but it's just interesting that a bill like this has caused so much consternation for me. I usually save that for the important matters, but maybe this is one of those. So thank you.
That's so rude.
Representative Mathis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to address the pitfalls of this kind of legislation. This is hard for me. This is very difficult because I was a mayor and I understand that process. I am a veterinarian and I deal with these issues on a daily basis. A month ago, I probably saw the worst dog-on-dog bite that I have seen in 35 years of practice. And it was a golden retriever that chewed up a Shih Tzu. Ended up having to take a lung and 7 ribs and patch that dog back together, a family pet on another family pet. There is no way that we're going to legislate total safety in society. We have leash laws, we have ordinances that owners are to be responsible for their pets. We have opportunity to prosecute those who don't. There's nothing more tragic than a child being bitten by a dog. Nothing more frightening in a family's life than a child being bitten or mauled by a dog. The problem with a pit bull is that pit bull is not necessarily a breed. It's a type of dog. It's a square-faced, heavy-nosed, heavy-muzzled dog. It can include several breeds. It can be a Staffordshire Terrier. It can be a Bull Terrier. It can be a Boston Terrier cross with something that has that said. It's a type. It's not a breed. And if we pass ordinances that outlaw a specific breed, and a pit bull is not necessarily a specific breed or type, it by its very nature would open up some liability and some challenges and some problems. And I think Representative from Salt Lake has addressed that. And if we try and pick out a pit bull or a pit bull type dog, we all have in our mind what that image is. But what is it? What really is that dog? The dog is an uncontrolled, unleashed animal that has turned vicious for some reason, and that's where the prosecution needs to take place. We DNA test these dogs all the time in our practice, and it's become a game for us trying to guess what breeds are in these animals as we DNA test them, because you look at the characteristics and you think this is going to have some border collie and poodle, and almost never are we right visually inspecting them compared to DNA. The most common factors in dog bites in the United States are young children and a familiarity with the pet, either family-owned or neighbor, and not necessarily the type. That's the most common. And so the best strategy to prevent dog bites are to watch your dogs, watch your children. We could legislate everything in the world for safety, but we're not going to live in a safe society. This is not, in my mind, good policy because there's too many unknowns, too many uncertainties. I showed the good representative to the side of me some scars that I have. I almost lost this thumb, I almost lost this hand, and they were from pit bulls, pit bull type dogs. And if anyone would have a reason to not like them, it might be me. But I think it's poor policy. I think that we need to control our animals. We need to have leash laws. The cities and the towns need to have those ordinances, but they need to enforce them. If we're going to outlaw a specific breed of dog, maybe we ought to outlaw a cluster of larger breeds of dogs that might be involved in a multitude of these including German Shepherds, Rottweilers, Dobermans, Mastiffs, other dogs that might be causing this. But to single out a dog as a breed when in reality it's really a type, and it's very, very difficult to determine what that dog really is just extremely poor policy. So I'm going to be supporting this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Oda.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Some very good points have been brought up. In most parts, I have to agree with my colleague from Utah County that there's a good balance here that we have to look at. My colleague from Eagle Mountain talks about local control on that. I do like the idea of local control on many issues. But one of the things we got to remember is that not only was the federal government basically a creation of the states, local government exists under the authority of the states as well. As such, if your local government starts putting into place ordinances that are not based on scientific fact, but on emotion, no expertise coming out of it, but on emotional levels, then we have a responsibility to take care of that at our level. Now, the good sponsor, being a personal injury attorney, understands that these things do happen, and the individual, the homeowner or the dog owner, is held responsible. Myself, I've been in the insurance industry